Hello. Okay, so it's been a while since I've made a video, but I've been extremely busy. So I have a couple of updates. Number one, um, you'll be happy to know that I do have professional studio lighting now. Not in this video, as you can see. I don't know. Some people have complained about the video quality, want better video quality. So it has nothing to do with the camera. The camera's actually fine, but the frame rate will slow down when the lighting is not strong. So for my office here, I did get studio lighting. I just haven't had time to set it up because it will take me a couple hours to do so. So in the future, you will see better quality videos. So you should be happy about that. Okay, number two, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that I said a while ago that I was going to make a video about the new rash of banker suicides. So this is what this video is going to be about. So if we update you on what's going on with the banker suicides, as you know, if you've been following my YouTube channel, there's a whole rash. I think it was like 8 or 9 of very prominent bankers that supposedly or allegedly committed suicide. And the circumstances around those suicides were very questionable. So I'll put the link below because I don't want to rehash that whole video. So I'll put the link below in the video description so you can go watch it and check it out if you want to get up to date, because there are a lot of questionable circumstances surrounding those alleged suicides because those bankers held very high positions. So we're not talking like bank tellers, not talking mid-level bank executives. We're talking very high-level, multi-million-dollar earning executives that had a lot of knowledge about the criminal activities of banks like JP Morgan and so forth that committed suicide earlier this year. So now there's another rash of banker suicides, or suicides of very prominent individuals that are anti-dollar, anti-US dollar, or have said things that can be construed as being very anti-US dollar. So, you know, you can go back if you're into the conspiracy thing about all the US presidents that were shot or assassinated that seem to also back gold and not the dollar, like John F. Kennedy, like President Reagan, like Abraham Lincoln before, that fought the Rothschilds to finance the Civil War. The Rothschilds wanted him to pay 23% interest. Lincoln didn't. He issued greenbacks and he was murdered. So it goes on and on and on throughout history. So let's get started. So earlier this month, I believe it was around October 20th or so, there was CEO of a French energy giant Total named Christophe de Margerie. And sorry if I'm mangling that name because I'm not really that familiar with French and French names. But anyways, he was killed on taking off in his private jet in an airport in Moscow. Now, there are a lot of suspect details about this apparent accident because, number one, Margerie had said just 3 months prior that, let me find the exact quote for you, because he had come out and said, quote unquote, there is no reason to pay for oil in dollars. So I'm sure that really angered a lot of the pro-US dollar banking cartel. The Rothschild family angered the Rockefellers, angered all the owners of the US Federal Reserve cartel. So it seems a little coincidental that 3 months after he's telling the whole world we don't need to pay for oil in US dollars anymore, that he ended up dead under very suspect circumstances. Again, this is all speculation. We don't know. Maybe it was just an accident. Maybe it was terrible safety protocol at the Moscow airport. But already there's suspect details coming out. So, you know, the jet, what happened upon takeoff, it collided into a snowplow that was clearing the runway. And they said the snowplow driver was drunk. But already the lawyer has come out and said, that is total garbage after setting up the snowplow driver because he had health issues that actually forbid him to drink. So he said he hadn't touched alcohol in a long time. Of course, as a defense lawyer, maybe that's not true. We don't know. But if he did indeed have health issues that prevented him from drinking alcohol, and he didn't drink alcohol for a long time, then why was he drunk? So again, there's never any type of situation where a prominent person that speaks out against the US dollar dies in some kind of shady accident or commits suicide where there's not suspect elements. That's the whole thing. There's suspect elements. We can go back to Gabriel McGee, the JP Morgan banker that jumped from the top of their headquarter building in London, where his girlfriend said she had made plans with him for dinner earlier that evening. His parents said he was not depressed, he was happy. So why does a happy banker making plans with his girlfriend just for dinner hours later jump off the top of a building? Again, makes no sense, but it's a clean way to suicide someone if you're a top banker that doesn't want these people still alive, that have a lot of inside information that could send you to jail. Because if you try to notice that the other thing besides this plane crash is a lot of bankers are dying either by hanging or by jumping off buildings. So why not just take a gun and shoot yourself if you're going to commit suicide? Because that's a lot cleaner, probably a lot less pain instantaneously, but then it leaves ballistic reports, it leaves guns, so it leaves all kind of other angles open to the fact that it may not have been a suicide. And also as well, I don't know if you remember the story of Gary Webb, because I think Hollywood actor Jerry Renner is making a movie about Gary Webb's story. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist who uncovered the links between the CIA bringing in cocaine to Los Angeles to fund black ops through Freeway Rick Ross. And he ended up dead after breaking the story. I'm sure he was told not to print the story with a double tap to the head. So they said it was suicide. So how do you kill yourself? Shooting yourself not once, but then pulling the trigger a second time. And they said it's suicide. So it's so ridiculous. So maybe after that they learned, okay, we can't shoot people in the head and plant a gun on them and say it's suicide. So let's just push them off buildings, drug them, push them off buildings and whatnot. But it's interesting because, okay, it's just not Marjorie. There's other bankers that recently have killed themselves. So let me tell you about these stories as well. So also earlier this year, I believe it was in March, there was a young American CEO, Autumn Radke. I believe her name's R-A-D-T-K-E, last name. Again, if I'm mangling that name, I apologize. But she was found dead in the media in Singapore. And the media all reported the fact that it was a suicide. And she was the head of a Bitcoin exchange named, let me check it out. The name was First Meta Bitcoin Exchange. And she was found dead in Singapore. Actually, it was on February 28th. So the end of February, beginning of March. And the media all reported it as a suicide, but it said there's going to be toxicology reports to come out that could either confirm that was suicide or perhaps dispute the fact that it was suicide. And since then, I've actually just, it's months and months later now, right? It's at the end of October, and I've done a Google search and could find no other information about what that toxicology report said. So interesting enough, at the beginning of the year when there's a rash of banker suicides, they said the same thing. There was one banker found dead in his apartment of unknown reasons, and he was a young guy. So probably it was like not natural causes, like he was 80, 90 years old. So again, they said the toxicology report is forthcoming, but then no details about the toxicology report followed. So again, there's always shady things going on. So anything that challenges the supremacy, the global hegemony of the US dollar, seems like people associate with that end up dead in questionable circumstances. So she was another person. And Bitcoin certainly is a threat to the US dollar, and perhaps that's why they slammed it so much from above 1,000. I think it went to as low as 350 or something like that. So again, you have people involved in arenas or you could say currency alternatives that challenge US dollar and end up dead. Now, it's interesting because if you look at some of the geopolitical events, like what happened in Libya when NATO went in and killed Muammar Gaddafi after he started speaking of a gold-backed monetary system to unite all of the African nations on the continent of Africa, then NATO sent people in, killed him, and then they stole Libya's 144 tons of gold. Now, it could have been that's a lot of gold, 144 tons for a country as small as Libya, but it could have actually even been a lot more than 144 tons. And why I say this is because what countries report to the IMF as far as the amount of gold reserves they have across the board are probably actually all lies. So there are countries that have a lot more that are underreporting, like China, like Russia, probably have far more gold than they're reporting. There are countries that are bluffing and reporting much more gold than they hold, which is probably the United States. And so you say, well, why would they do that? Well, these are currency wars. So it's just like in a game of poker. You don't show your hand. They're not going to tell you how much gold they actually have in this game until they're ready to move to a different currency system backed by gold. So at that time, we'll find out how much gold Russia really has, how much gold China really has. We don't know how much, maybe Libya had twice as much gold, and that's the gold they stole. But interestingly enough, again, if you go in, it's the same thing with Ukraine. It was reported all of Ukraine's gold disappeared as soon as the U.S. went in and was shipped out at an airport. There was a story, but you can't find any follow-up information as far as like how much gold, where did it go, who took it. So there's a lot of shadowy things going on in the banking and global financial world right now. So who are the latest bankers to commit suicide? Okay, we've had the former hedge fund partner of the former International Monetary Fund head, Dominique Strauss-Kahn, Thierry Lane. Again, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his last name, Leyne, or even his first name. And he jumped off the 23rd floor of his exclusive residential complex in Tel Aviv, Israel. And the second banker that killed himself was the managing director and associate general counsel of Deutsche Bank in their regulatory litigation and internal investigation group. Now, people familiar with him, his name was Charlie Gambino, said that he was, quote-unquote, anxious about various authorities investigating areas of the bank where he worked, and he was also heavily involved in negotiating legal issues for Deutsche Bank in the areas of their manipulation crimes in LIBOR, their manipulation crimes in the currencies markets, and maybe even their manipulation crimes in the precious metals markets as well, because as we all know, Deutsche Bank vacated their seats on the prior London gold and silver fix when the heat was coming down from the European regulatory agencies about their involvement in manipulating gold and silver prices. So these, again, Gambino was found hanging by his neck from a stairway banister. Again, so the preferred, without sounding too conspiratorial here, but these are the preferred ways of offing people by the elite rather than a gunshot to the head. They prefer suicide by hanging, or suiciding someone by pushing them off a building rooftop. Now, what's also interesting, if you haven't seen Jeremy Scahill's documentary called Dirty Wars, I highly recommend it because he talks about a secretive, illegal military operation that the U.S. runs called JSOC. So JSOC is kind of like how the NSA was maybe 30 years ago. 30 years ago, no one knew about the NSA and how they're spying on everyone. Well, no one knew about JSOC before Jeremy Scahill brought this to light. JSOC stands for the Joint Security Operations Command, and he interviewed someone in that documentary that basically says that JSOC has a wet team. It's 70 different countries. So perhaps people say, oh, well, that Total CEO was killed in Russia. So what? So what? There's U.S. agents and agents of other countries operating in Russia. They, could be offing people not only in the United States, but obviously all around the world as well, because this guy said that they have teams in 70 different countries. Of course, the official narrative for JSOC, what they're doing is they're killing terrorists, but bankers run a lot of the military operations, and they see as terrorists anyone that is pushing back against them with their plans to ruin humanity's wealth, ruin every citizen in the world's wealth through their currency wars, and to keep U.S. dollar hegemony and keep everyone locked in their shackles of the fractional reserve banking system as a terrorist. So that definition really means that anyone could be on their hit list. So it's very, very interesting. I highly recommend watching that documentary, which someone posted on YouTube, so you can even find it. I believe it's actually under a Spanish title, but it is in English. So the title for Dirty Wars in Spanish, I believe, would be Guerras Sucias. So you can look that up. I'll put the link, in fact, below, so you can find the link to that documentary on YouTube below in the video description. So again, two more very suspect deaths regarding banking executives. I knew a lot about the criminal activities of their bosses. And lastly, the last point I want to review is that there was a story that there was an article by Jim Rickards, who a lot of you already know, that I think is a banking shill. I consider a banking shill because he engages in a very complex disinformation tactic, which is to mix truth with lies. Okay, so if you just told lies all the time, then no one's going to believe you. But if you mix the occasional truth with the occasional lie, then people tend to believe your lies. So the reason I don't trust Jim Rickards, even though he has said some very positive things about gold and backs gold as a sound money, talks about the purchasing power destruction that central bankers are wreaking upon all of the world's citizens, which is true. He always quotes official government statistics. He always quotes the lies of U.S. unemployment, of U.S. inflation that central bankers put out. So that's what makes me distrust Jim Rickards, because he engages in this very complex disinformation tactic of mixing lies with truth. So he just came out and said, hey, gold's going to $7,000 an ounce, and apparently that article went viral in China. Now, here's why I find the timing of that very questionable, because I do think that gold will eventually go multiples higher, but I think there is danger in gold right now. Now, if he were a banking hack and a banking shill, he would plant that story now to get people to go into gold right now if the price of gold were going to be pushed lower. So if it were pushed lower, then it would discourage everyone that had bought gold at these prices and they see a drop, and it will make the propaganda campaign of the bullion bankers and the pro-USD anti-gold bankers, their propaganda campaign even more effective when they start selling the gold is dead narrative, if they're able to knock gold down below 1,200 once again. So that's what makes the timing of this very curious. Okay, I just want to make one last point about Jim Rickards, because it was very interesting where that story went viral. They said that story went viral in China. Now, it's not like Chinese need to be told to buy gold as a great store of wealth. I mean, Chinese has thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history understanding that gold is the best form of money possible. And they also have a history of fiat currency collapses, so they understand the wealth preservation qualities of physical gold. And in fact, I have a friend that is a teacher at a university in China, one of the largest cities, although Americans wouldn't be familiar with this city at all because most Americans only know Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou or I don't know how you pronounce that city, but other well-known cities. But this city is not as well-known, although it's a huge city with a population of nearly 30 million, second only to Tokyo, I believe, has a population of like 36 million or so. But anyway, he taught his students that based upon this paper bear market, let me emphasize paper bear market, because the fundamentals have been very strong in the physical gold markets for the past 3 years, even though the paper market has been in bear market. He said that, and he taught students that Americans were selling their physical gold based upon all this Western banker propaganda saying gold is dead and whatnot. And he said his students were shocked, literally shocked, that they didn't understand why anyone would get rid of physical gold. So it's interesting this story went viral in China, because if the banking cartel was planning to force the price of gold lower to get Chinese to buy in now, again, it would be a psychological blow, a temporary one, and it will hurt the Chinese the most. So let's see again how this plays out. Okay, so that concludes today's vlog. It's quite a lengthy one because I haven't posted one in a long time. I'll try to come back. Hopefully my time won't be so short in supply, and I'll be able to make more regular videos, because I do want to post more videos on a regular basis. So please do subscribe below. As always, remain intensely curious, and until next time, so long.